Do you know what the 7 habits are that distance you from divine grace? At the heart of scriptures and ancient teachings, we discover behaviors that may silently divert our steps from the path illuminated by God, from attitudes that fill us with pride to the envy that corrupts our hearts, from the wrath that darkens our compassion to the sloth that prevents us from following divine designs. Today, we will dive deep into the wisdom passed down through the ages to reveal not just these habits but also how we can realign our lives with celestial virtues. This is a journey of self-discovery, transformation, and return to the essence of our existence, guided by faith and the pursuit of a more enlightened existence. Are you ready to unravel these truths and reorient your life according to teachings that please the divine? Your journey toward a life of fulfillment begins now. Pride, often considered the root of all sins, poses a significant threat to our spiritual journey. But what exactly makes pride so dangerous? At its core, pride is the overestimation of one's own value and capabilities, which obscures humility and gratitude, fundamental elements for a life aligned with divine precepts. The scriptures warn us about this in Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. This verse not only encapsulates the nature of pride but also its inevitable consequences. The fall, the trajectory of King Saul, detailed in the scriptures, offers an elucidative overview of how pride can distort our paths and distance us from divine instructions. In 1 Samuel 15:22-23, we find a decisive moment. Samuel said, "Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." This verse highlights Saul's fall, marked by his disobedience and pride, showing how these failures led to his rejection by God. Then let's talk about something that knocks on everyone's door: envy. It's that annoying feeling that sometimes pops up when we least expect it, right? Like when you're scrolling through social media and see something in someone's life that makes you think, "Wow, I wish that were me." You know, I think it's super normal to feel this way from time to time. After all, we're all human and always learning. But the most important thing is how we bring this into our walk with God. How can we look at this feeling and, with His help, transform it into something that makes us grow and strengthens our faith instead of bringing us down? Envy, right? It's like that friend who whispers in your ear, bringing nothing good, just comparison and dissatisfaction. But have you ever stopped to think why envy is so toxic to us, especially in our spiritual life? James 14-16 sheds some light on this. "For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find disorder and every evil practice." That's strong, isn't it? It shows how envy doesn't just mess with us internally, but can also ruin our relationships. Let's remember what happened between Cain and Abel. Cain's envy of Abel's blessings ended in anger, resentment, and sadly, violence. This story is a heavy reminder that envy can make us see everything as a competition, even God's love and blessings, which are actually infinite and available to everyone. So we just talked about envy, right? But there's another feeling that can be just as troublesome, if not more so. I'm talking about wrath. You know, when something doesn't go the way we want, and suddenly it feels like the temperature rises. Wrath is like that, quick and can heat things up before we realize it. But look, understanding and managing wrath is super important in our walk with God. Do you know that flame of wrath that, if we don't take care, ends up consuming everything, even our peace? There's a fine line that separates anger, something everyone feels, from wrath, which God prefers we avoid. Ephesians 4:26-27 gives a pretty direct hint about this. "In your anger do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold." This means more or less that feeling angry is normal, but letting that anger turn into something bigger, to the point of ruining everything, that's giving way to error. And hey, there's a story in the book of Numbers, chapter 20, verses 11 and 12, that illustrates this well. Moses, That guy who talked with God ended up letting wrath take over and struck a rock with his staff instead of speaking to it as God had asked. Because of that moment of wrath, he paid a high price. Doesn't that make you think? Even someone as great as Moses had his moments of slip-up because of wrath. Brothers and sisters, let's delve into another common challenge, but one that can be as limiting as the rest: sloth. This isn't just about those moments of wanting to stay in bed a bit longer. It's about the hesitation to do what is right and to follow the path God has for us. Look at what Proverbs 13:4 says. The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. This contrast between the emptiness of sloth and the fulfillment of diligence really makes us think, doesn't it? The parable of the talents, found in Matthew 25:14-30, is a story that illustrates well the consequences of sloth. The servant who hid his talent out of fear and laziness ended up losing everything. This reminds us of how much God appreciates when we make an effort and use the gifts He has given us. To combat sloth, we need discipline, a goal, and to take action. Setting small, achievable goals can help us reignite our passion and commitment, both to God's things and to our everyday lives. Whether it's through prayer, work, or helping others, every little step we take sincerely is a step away from sloth and closer to God's grace. Let's think together about the parts of our lives where sloth might be holding us back. How can we change that? Turn inertia into movement, indifference into passion? Remember that for God, no effort made in faith and love is ever in vain. Greed, that desire that is never satisfied for more, ends up blinding us to the blessings in our lives and ties our hearts to material wealth. This relentless pursuit often diverts us from spiritual fulfillment and leads us to a path of emptiness. 1 Timothy 6:10 warns us, "For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, and some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs." This biblical passage highlights not just the dangers of greed, but also how it can erode our faith and well-being. The parable of the rich fool, Luke 12:16-21, is a stark reminder that life's true value is not found in the abundance of possessions. The rich man, who stored up earthly wealth but was not rich toward God, faced the ultimate folly of his greed. This parable teaches us the importance of prioritizing our spiritual wealth over material gains. To combat greed, we must cultivate contentment and generosity. Recognizing the temporary nature of material possessions and focusing on acts of kindness and giving can change our perspective from scarcity to abundance. By investing in relationships and community, we accumulate treasures in heaven, where true wealth is measured by love and spiritual connection. Gluttony goes much beyond the mere act of overeating. It represents an excessive indulgence in the pleasures of the table, often to the point of waste and disregard for those in need. Proverbs 23:20-21 warns us, "Do not be among wine-bibbers, among riotous eaters of flesh. For the drunkard and the glutton shall come to poverty, and drowsiness shall clothe a man with rags." This wisdom speaks not just of the physical consequences of gluttony, but also of its spiritual and social implications. I remember a moment in my own life when gluttony wasn't about food, but about always wanting more than I needed in various areas. It was as if no matter how much I had, it was never enough. This made me reflect on how this aligned, or didn't, with my values and what I learned about sharing and being grateful. The story of Esau selling his birthright for a bowl of lentils, Genesis 25:29-34, is a powerful testimony to the dangers of letting our appetites control us. Esau's impulsive decision to satisfy his immediate hunger cost him his future inheritance and blessings. This narrative warns us of the dangers of prioritizing temporary pleasures over our spiritual destiny and responsibilities. Have you ever stopped to think about what's really behind that almost automatic urge to grab a second, maybe a third piece of cake? It's not just hunger, right? Sometimes we seek in food something more, maybe a comfort, an extra dose of joy, or even a way to escape from something weighing on our minds. So, how do we face this gluttony that, admit it, sometimes catches us off guard? First step: self-knowledge. Am I eating because I'm really hungry? Or am I trying to fill another type of void? This moment of reflection can be a real eye-opener. And how about we bring gratitude to the table? Before starting to eat, let's take a quick pause to give thanks. Why not think about the journey of that food, from who planted it to it arriving on your plate? This simple exercise can change the way you view your next meal, turning an act of gluttony into a moment of true appreciation. Ah, lust, that desire that makes us forget there's such a thing as self-control, right? Jokes aside, it's much more serious than just a physical desire. Lust can really distort our perception of love and distance us from genuine connections. In Matthew 5:28, we are reminded, "But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart." This teaching challenges us to look beyond our desires, asking us to maintain purity, not just in action, but also in thought. The story of David and Bathsheba, 2 Samuel 11, clearly shows how destructive lust can be. David's moment of weakness led not only to adultery, but triggered a series of events that brought great suffering. This story emphasizes that succumbing to lust can have far-reaching consequences beyond our immediate gratification, affecting our relationship with God and others. As we conclude our exploration of the 7 habits that displease God, we are reminded that our spiritual journey is one of continual growth and reflection. Each of these habits, pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust, challenges us to examine our hearts and align our lives more closely with God's will. By embracing humility, gratitude, patience, diligence, generosity, moderation, and purity, we open ourselves to a deeper, more meaningful relationship with the divine. Let this discussion not be seen as a condemnation, but rather as an invitation to transformation. May each of us find the courage and strength to shed these habits, cultivating a life that not only pleases God, but also brings true fulfillment to ourselves and those around us. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Let's continue to support one another in faith, love, and action.